So, who has the Leslie Smith underdog pick? Who was the Mexican dude and the lesbian chick? Everybody say you mean Lesbo and the Bean. Who's that out there living they dream? Lesbo and the Bean. Who's that still smoking all the green? Lesbo and the Bean. Come on, y'all, let me hear you scream. Lesbo and the Bean.
Welcome back. Episode 96. Starting off with a post show. What a fun night of fights. I feel like we were bragging here at LaTB that it was going to be a weekend to watch fights. We had so many coin flips, so many underdogs, potentially actually a lot of the favorites won, but the ones that came through big.
Yeah, it was a good night.
It was a fun night.
Except for our Leslie Smith underdog pin.
Except for a few fights falling out. It was a 13 card bout. That got broken down to 11. And quickly before the whole night even started off, Leslie Aspen-Ladd ended up missing weight on Friday.
Before even all that, thanks guys for coming back. We just really appreciate you and love you. And thanks for listening again. Thanks for joining us this Sunday, or it might be even your Monday morning at work, and you wish it was your Sunday again. So, yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
So
we can get back into it.
I was just getting out of the gate. It was such a fun night of fights. There was so much that went on in the UFC. I think that there's so much to talk about with this specific case of Ladd falling out because of feminine issues. Couldn't make weight. Which, how do you feel about that, Lesbo, specifically? Because being an MMA figure, if I could say that, I think you could speak a little bit on it.
I agree that women, you do carry more weight. It would be harder to cut weight. I've been saying it since I've been watching women do this sport. Like, what would you even do if you fought the week of your period? Like, sometimes you just feel extra ick. Or if you did have to cut weight, I just wouldn't want to be the first woman to use it as the excuse.
Doesn't it kind of diminish the fight status a little bit, unfortunately? But there was also other fighters who didn't make weight.
And they didn't say they were on their period.
They just said it was a miscalculation and or something changed, but the main event
I'm
did
sorry,
not
it was
make weight as
unprofessional,
well.
and I won't allow it to happen again.
Right? You don't try to blame it on an external thing, which most fighters do.
But I have another. I think I call fishy. I think the UFC wanted to get rid of Leslie and hype Aspen-Ladd. They were feeling bad about Aspen-Ladd's chances against Leslie. Pay her off. We were talking about it last night. How unprecedented is it? Mm-hmm. We've never seen it in the UFC before. Win money.
Out of nowhere, gives her win money, and then they're like, oh, we don't want to do business with you. Now, the thing that people may be overlooking, they're like, oh, she's going to go right to Invicta. Who owns Invicta?
Truth.
Like, who owns all these other leagues? Who's been starting to buy them all up? They won't give her potential. Like, she's going to need to lean hard into this, or she's going to be on really other organizations that aren't going to pay as much and give her as much of a scene. It's really unfortunate, but this is, when you start talking about that union,
this is what happens.
This is what happens. This is one of those things where the squeaky wheel does get the attention sometimes, but sometimes that attention is
getting replaced with a new wheel.
Exactly. So, unfortunately for Leslie Smith, it's a predecessor of what's to come in the UFC as well. How they're going to keep treating this, which they have. Other people that have talked about the union, Randy Couture, other people.
I just can't believe they gave her the win money. They could have given her just the show money and still not hired her back.
Right.
So the fact that they paid her the win too, that's like hush money.
Which was like $32,000 because it was 32 to show, 32 to win, I believe, something like that, and maybe 64 they gave her. But they didn't ask to re-sign her, and now she's just like, okay, now I don't have insurance and a job. No, and this is what she's fighting for. No extra benefits, because guess what? She's had broken hands, wrists, and all sorts of stuff due to this sport under contract.
We'll have to see how this plays out. It'll be interesting. I'm sure she'll be on Ariel Monday.
I'm sure, yeah. I'm absolutely
sure. I've seen her on a few shows, but they weren't good enough interviews. Ariel asked the right questions.
I agree. So the next question with all this is, does the Leslie Smith pick stay alive? Because there is no more life for Leslie Smith in the UFC, unfortunately.
I don't know what happens. I think it stays. My father used to always say, if you don't know where to go, stay where you're at. And I think that's true for Leslie Smith pick. Unless we had somebody that were like, who easily replaces her.
Right. And Leslie Smith, I'm just going to say, that first TKO due to Cyborg was controversial. That was not an out woman. We don't know how number 2 would go. So now we won't ever. It's a Ben Askren situation. We won't know if she can redeem herself. With the other fights that fell out, we had Ali Bagatinov versus who it was Bibliatov versus Sasaki due to Bibliatov's back also flaring up. It is weight cut issue as well. I feel like these guys injuries flare up because they're ultra dehydrated. Exactly, and they've been working out for hours trying to get it. A lot of them seem to water load. That water loading technique, though it works sometimes, it doesn't. We've seen more and more guys, even the main event, missed weight by a pound. And what was his excuse? If he had one, he actually posted, Kevin Lee posted out after weigh-ins, after 400 wrestling matches and X amount of fights, he has never missed weight. He's a guy that's going to go to that 165 division as soon as it's made. A lot of people are speculating whether it's going to come about or not. How do you feel?
No, that's part of the new signature or signing. What I've heard in the rumors of the ABC, ESPN, is that these 2 new weight classes will be
with
added.
The potential contract?
Yes, that's what I've heard is those will be added. And I've heard Reebok is gone with that. Like, once the new television contract signed, everything changes.
I love it.
So,
that would be amazing. 165, 155, 170,
I think
to
it
the
was
deepest
a
divisions.
160 though. Maybe 165. I think it was a 160.
It doesn't matter. Those 2 divisions are so thick that there's perfect guys in between that, and it's going to fill up very quickly, and it's going to be a highlight. I guarantee you it'll be a highlight division as the other 55 and 70 are, because that's human body size. That's the realness of
where
a
normal guy walks around, let's say at 150, and then a guy with muscle walks around.
The heavyweights are the anomalies. That's why they're amazing to see, is because like these are the Nephilims of our time.
These Viking guys.
Other than Willis, that dude was $185. Jeez, against Chase Sherman.
We talked about Willis in this whole fight. He could have fought down. He needs to freaking get that fat off of him.
I'm sure he's been hearing that his whole life.
Though, you compared him to Roy Nelson, but in my opinion, they have very different bodies. Roy Nelson seems hard. Even though he has a big gut, he doesn't have titties, like loose, fat, jiggly skin.
It was... Willis holds his weight very weirdly, but before all of that, before we get to Willis's weight and those lovely curves he has, we should start with Tony Martin defeating Nakamura.
How did you end up doing in the night overall?
I actually ended up going 6 of 11, and one of my weird picks
but
came
on air
through.
it went 7 of 11.
What?
For our picks, you were 7 of 11.
Was it 7 last night? Okay.
No, of ours, because no one, I don't know, unless they follow you on Tapology, they only get our picks from the show. And so on air, you were 7 of 11,
7 of
even
11.
though you put an error on your Tapology card.
Right. I think is when I scroll through looking at these guys' stats, I'm not clicking over either way. Personal problems. So, 7 of 11 on the show. It was... a fun night of fights, a lot of finishes, made a couple prop bets. The Bean did throw out some info out there, didn't cash, but hey, you'll get your refund later.
One of the best picks, if you listen to the show, the Leslie Smith pick ended up falling off, but something that we really were heavy on air that I think really paid off was the Bagatinov, or the other, not Bibliatov. What was the
Dakishvili?
No. The other guy's name that starts with
Baghilzara?
Baghilzara.
Versus
And we said round 2 finish for him, and that's what it came out to be. And that was a good prop bet that if you followed, I think it was $4 or plus or minus 400.
It was around there, depending on the betting sites, because some of them offered it, some of them didn't. But yeah, it was around that. To call it in the specific round of the second round. I think we might have had submission, but it ended up finishing via KO before we get there.
Oh yeah, let me just tell you one more thing. You know how we were talking about t-shirts?
Yes.
A t-shirt that I think would kind of be our shirt would be from the bottom to the top. We say that a lot. If we had bird in here that would just repeat stuff that was said the most on the show, it wouldn't just be coin flip. It would also be from the bottom to the top, because you say it every show.
We do have a resident bird, but he just likes to ninja chop things and be loud.
Maybe one day. Maybe one
In
day.
time.
We want to build him a space perch for the new studio. And just have him in here, since he's going to scream his head off the whole time anyway.
Yeah.
We'll just bring him in.
Interesting.
He's camera shy, so he might be in here all zip-lipped.
Actually quiet. Eventually, I feel like he'll end up taking over. He's a chatty one. To the Nakamura Tony Martin.
Let's do it.
The minus 210, 170 debuting Tony Martin
I
actually
like
looked
the
great.
5-minute open monologue. That's where...
It is right around there, just to give people a taste.
Yeah.
Tony Martin looked great at 170 pounds.
Really good.
Really, really good. His chin issues didn't look so bad. His movement in general, that 155, it's just such a big gap. It's 15 pounds right there. That's huge. But Martin's filling in. He's still a young man growing into his body, where Nakamura really looked his age. At 35 years old in there. Looks slow, has always been slow, but has always been able to really use the grappling to get there. And he did get the takedowns in the fight, the majority, but was being picked apart so
Everywhere.
heavily by Martin.
Martin looked really good.
Yep, Nakamura is someone that people have started to figure out a lot, and he's not getting any better, unfortunately. Tony Martin was talking a lot during that fight. How did you feel about that?
I like that. I like when fighters get passionate about it and get into it and start, Kevin, we noticed it a lot. I actually noticed it in a few times. We saw Sherman and Willis do it.
Yep.
And we saw Lee and Barboza do it.
Yeah,
I like it.
True.
I would probably
So,
get all passionate. You just...
I do think that Nakamura is a gatekeeper at minimum level to be in the UFC, and Tony Martin, where people have said he's chinny at 155, where he was way more dehydrated. I think this is a big turn that Tony Martin is going to be a favorite coming on out. He's going to look better. He's on the projection up, where Nakamura is on the downslide, where I'm going to have to really start fading Nakamura a bit more now. And Tony Martin, he looked so good everywhere. Gas tank, takedown defense, on point.
His body looked good. The only thing that I have to say, in my opinion, I know you had Nakamura going into the fight, but in my opinion, when I look back at this, thinking of if I'm going to bet on Martins again, I'm going to think, it was just Nakamura that he beat. Like, I'm not really hype on the win. Even though he looked really good in there, it was against Nakamura. There's a lot in that division.
Oh, it's full of monsters.
So
For sure.
We'll see.
For sure. Then we had a beating at 205 pounds. Corey Anderson defeating Pat Cummings in a decision. This looked like it could have been finished in the first round multiple times. Corey Anderson looked better than he's ever looked in a fight. Pat Cummings was hurt off of the bell and barely stayed in that fight, and then took a beating pretty much for 3 more rounds. Pat Cummings tough as hell, but I was on Cummings. Obviously, I was wrong, because Corey, overtime, definitely put a clinic all over the wrestling that I said Pat Cummings had a favor in.
Yeah,
Not one bit.
At all.
Corey Anderson was all over that. I think Lesbo was spot on with her calls of those big punchers are way bigger punchers than Pat Cummings. And it showed. Pat Cummings tried to get there, couldn't beat him.
There was a couple of times I really thought Corey Anderson knocked Cummings' mustache right off his face. Like, his mustache folded over, and I was like, what? I thought a guy lost an eye. I thought a mustache got knocked off
poor
his face.
Pat Cummings. He was rodeo ridden. There's been a few kids given out there.
Corey Anderson looked patient. But all this being said, I will still think the exact same thing I said about last fight.
Great call.
Oh, he just beat Pat Cummings.
Great call. I think that's going to be more it as well. And Pat Cummings is dicey in the division. His chin, for me, is holding on by a thread. These big power guys that he fights is going to be really scary.
I like his look better.
I like the
fun
Anderson
mustache look.
I like the Anderson. I think that he's against people that aren't the biggest strikers. He's going to do a lot of this to them, because Pat Cummings is not an easy grind of a wrestling match, and he looked overwhelmingly favored. I think it was a 30-26 round in there for Corey Anderson.
Every single one looked like there was like a 30.
A judge was like, whoa, that was a 10-8 round.
Every single one.
And these were the old rules, so this was the one hand on the ground instead of the two on the knuckles.
Okay.
But the judging as well is a bit different because leg kicks don't tend to be as much in this.
That little Chase Sherman referee, who got knocked
that
out.
Little judge. Oh, we'll get there because there's a funny one.
Yeah.
There's a couple good ones with Badhazara. We already talked about it a few times against Luna Chagas. Chagas is a beast, and he's 24 years old. He's still learning tons. Chagas, to a lot of other people, really, really scary. But Badhazara has this unique type of style and power.
I like him a lot.
Power. He ended up the whole fight landing better strikes. He got hit a little bit, but never really looked too rocked. Never does in too many fights. His body looked lean and very regular guyish. He didn't look like Chagas, who was very muscular.
Yeah, he wasn't all cut up.
Exactly. That would be your uncle. You'd be like, hey, uncle, I'm going to get that beer out of your hand. And he's like, hey, kid, they know me as the Afghan killer. And he grabs you by your side and you're like, ah! Because he's your crazy-ass uncle string.
He's fun to watch. I like everything about him. He is a sneaky play. He's
going to be an
underdog coming. Yeah, he's sneaky power. Killer ground game. He's kind of really good everywhere. I really like him going forward.
And the interesting thing that I always forget about is that he really fights because he wants to fight. Because isn't he, you were telling me, he's royalty.
Oh, I don't know.
I feel like he's royalty. I don't think that he's like impoverished. Like he grew up like, who is it? The guy who went over to LFA, little mustache guy, the little one, Uncle Creepy.
Oh, okay.
Like
his like Nagano or
no, somebody who came from money. But he came from like, he's like a prince or like family of princes and stuff. So he fights because he wants to. But that flick kick that got him to the liver, how do you feel that finished though? People were saying it was controversial because Chagas was going down with that flick to the liver, to the body, and then that uppercut from hell came down and Chagas
I don't
fell
know.
asleep.
The punch doesn't even look that bad to me.
It
Because even when I'm
was,
watching him afterward on the mat, Chagas is like writhing. Like
he was out. To me, he was completely
his
stiff.
hands are on his gut to me. And he's like, oh.
I think we need to...
I'll put a
GIF. Yeah,
I'll
put the GIF in, and he's stiff and out, and they don't go...
And I do think the punch connects, but I think he's in so much fucking pain, he doesn't even give a shit about that punch.
Initially, I thought that he had passed out due to a liver shot, because I've seen that in fights and stuff, like, people...
Yeah, it's like the secondary punch, and... Do I think that the fighter should take a secondary punch in a fight? Yes, always. Until it stops, keep taking the punch.
We have a couple situations this night. We're in that second...
What's the first thing that the ref tells you in the ring?
Until I get in there.
No, it's protect yourself at all times.
At all times. Ooh, but that's where, if you're unconscious, that's where the ref is supposed to be in there to protect you.
It's not my job to know you're unconscious as the other fighter. And a lot of times we have seen fighters like, he's out, I'm stepping away. But
we have those situations coming about.
To me,
such a fun
there
night
was
of fights.
a split second in between kick with punch. It
with
wasn't
an uppercut.
enough time for your head to be like, is this guy out? He's out. Even if you're like, oh, he's totally knocked out. Your arm's already coming through.
True,
like, there's only so much that
because even with the body shots with other people, usually there's a bit of ground and pound before it's over.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that's the controversy of the night.
That's one of them.
Yeah,
There's
I didn't even
multiple.
hear anything about it, but I wasn't on Twitter as heavily as normal.
So on to Ricky Simon versus Mirab Vakishvili. This was a submission in the 5th round. The lady submission over. We were just saying this. If somebody's out, you let go. This is the one of the most unique situations. We've only seen one like it before in LFA. Not LFA, in Invicta, where a woman, when she stepped away after the bell, the fighter under her was out, but the fighter under her won the whole time. Mirab, great gas tank, great cardio, hurt Simone multiple times, every single round. I could have said the first round 10-8. Simone was hanging on by a thread with takedowns in wrestling, and Dakashvili ended up actually getting a lot of takedowns and going from striking to takedowns with a lot of spinning stuff. Had a gas tank that unreal. I was incredibly impressed. Simone won that fight, to me, fair and square. He lost all 3 rounds, but in the last 45 seconds, rolled for a guillotine after Dakishvili shot in for a takedown, rolled over, ended up on top, and Dakishvili was initially for 45 seconds kicking his legs like he was on a bicycle, kept kicking him nonstop, and I thought he was out a few times, and I was yelling at the TV, stop it, ref, he's out, he's out. I thought I was watching a man die. I texted you, I think he's dead. Like, you're supposed to hold, that takes 4 seconds and you're out, cold. He was holding it for 30 seconds and I'm like, this guy's gonna have brain trauma. This guy is literally, and it's gonna be controversy, but then the ref would touch Dakishvili's arm and he would give him a thumbs up. It was like a wrestling move where they're like, he's out, he's out. No, he's okay. Oh, he's okay. And I was just shitting my pants.
Like you're waiting to like Hulk Hogan.
Yeah. Oh, it was literally that type of situation. But at this time, Simone's also cranking it more and more. He's not stopping. And Simone, the bell rings. Right before that, checked again. The ref's okay, but the bell rings and his legs stop pumping within 2 seconds after the bell rings, and his legs stop pumping and both of his arms are literally on the mat. Simone lets him go and his head falls, and Simone points. You can see it in the GIF. He points at him and goes, he's out. The ref looks and is out. Other refs step in because they saw it from a distance, which I love that they
were
did.
All sketched out, or like you were at home watching. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like, that ref didn't see it. We got to come in. Simone won that fight. And people, the controversial thing with that fight as well is people are upset that it was a TKO instead of a submission because people are saying it was a submission.
So true. Yeah, that is so true. Yeah, it should be a submission.
But because it was I reposted it, Caposa, Grabica Hitman, he ended up reposting the definition via the rules of that night why it was a TKO. It was because it was a doctor stoppage. Because he went out.
The ref just did a
because
bad job.
the ref did a bad job, and the other refs came in and were like, that guy was out. Also, what happened right after he let his head go, said he was out. Dakishvili, you think he's out? And the ref grabs his arm, and he looks up at him and goes, okay, gives him a thumbs up, but then he stands up, or and goes to stand up, and he flat down, and the ref, or not the ref, the doctor is already there, because the doctor was also like, that guy's dying in there. And he couldn't get up for a little while. It was the right call. How did you feel? Do you feel Dakishvili won? Because he won 3 rounds handedly. Hurt Simone multiple times in every round.
Simone?
Simone.
Okay.
I heard it pronounced Simone over the weekend multiple times.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. I think it was the right call to make. I think even though it doesn't matter how long you're winning. It doesn't matter if you're Kevin Lee. And you're dancing.
But we'll all agree then it was a bad reffing call?
Yes.
Or
maybe. I don't know, because when I was watching the replay over and over again myself, I was watching the ref watch Dakishvili's eyes the whole time.
But there was angles of Dakishvili's eyes to me that looked dead.
Me too.
Where I was like, he's out! Yeah. And then he'd move and be like, oh my god, because he stopped moving at times, reacting where you're like, oh, guys do that because they're out. Asleep. They're asleep. There was just so much body language. Alpaca, gonna have to throw you a tweet. How do you feel? Even though I guess he's more in the body language, but what does the body language tell you in that situation, Alpaca? Was he out or wasn't he?
Oh, you want him to do it?
Yeah, I guess, right? Does it count for him? Because it's not really like a...
I don't know. I don't know if that's one we throw at him.
That's a unique one, right? But Simone points at him and says, he's out. And it's true. He was out for that. It was a fun one. One of the unique situations.
I think he might do something, because Alpaca Thesaurus, if you follow them or if you haven't seen the latest video, it is really telling on, he just plays a part from the Kevin Lee, Tony Ferguson fight, and he plays it in silence a few times.
That was
slow
really
motion,
good.
And then he plays it again with the sound and show you how biased you are to noise, or even a Herb Dean saying, get your hand out of the fence. So it would be an interesting one to see him play it in slow motion. What would you feel? Do you think this fighter's out with none of the sound going on, with none of the, So it might be an interesting one for Alpaca.
On to the 170-pound division, we have Ryan LaFleur defeating Alex Garcia in a decision. I feel like we were both on LaFleur's side, and exactly in this decision mode, where it was the gas tank of Garcia, which I feel like showed the grappling exchanges LaFleur nullified a few times. There was a few crazy scrambles in there. either fighter, I'm not really. Where do we go with Dakishvili real quick? And
they're both still
Simone.
too low on the thing that doesn't really matter.
We've seen Dakishvili twice falter, and his performance, though, I think he deserves a few more fights because he'll beat a lot of other
Simone,
guys.
You put money. I bet against him.
Against him,
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I would bet against him a little bit more. But same with kind of these two guys in LaFleur and Alex Garcia. I like LaFleur a little bit more, but I'm not I think he's getting at the limit of his potential.
I like LaFleur a little bit going forward because fighting a guy like Garcia, there's so much power there. You really just... LaFleur had to play such a smart game because there's that knockout potential in any one of the punches when you're fighting a guy like Garcia. To me, the most telling thing LaFleur did in this whole fight, or the most controlling thing that controlled this fight the most, was the leg kicks. Mm-hmm. Even one took Garcia all the way off his feet.
Yep.
Like, it was a sweeping leg kick. I think LaFleur is still, he might be a good underdog going forward. It might be hard to find him as an underdog because he's building a big name for himself. He's kind of like one of those.
And he's a grinder.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't like to fight grinders that are like that. It
Speaking
makes for a
of,
tough one.
Usman Ponzinibbio fell out.
Oh,
You're the one who told me about it.
it's true. Ponzinibbio's are injured in Chile, and no one's going to want to fight Usman. Who's going to step in for that?
And that's the main event of the card.
I know. So I'm thinking Usman's not going to get a fight, and they're going to move somebody local up there. But it has to be almost a Latino. Like, who else? What other Chilean fighters do we have at the 170 division? I don't know if I know of any. I think Ponzinibbio was the closest thing. That's why he was headlining it.
As a Brazilian?
As an Argentinian.
Argentinian. Oof. That's a bummer. That's a bummer. I hope
Right, that was such a good fight.
I hope everything goes right, and maybe we'll get to see it on 226, because that card is monster. 225's looking like a monster. We're gonna have a summer of fights.
We are going to have a summer of fights. Though what I haven't been liking, the trends I've been seeing, is the rarity was having 4 full team fights come through.
I don't want a
proved it
14
again.
fight card.
I
Honestly,
agree,
it's too
but
much.
it's proving over.
I'm glad they're putting 14 on a card, so even if 3 fall out, we end up with 11. 11 and 12 is my sweet spot.
That is the sweet spot.
9 and 10's too short. 13, 14 is too long. I like the 11 and 12.
I agree.
I mean, the more fights, the better. Give me a 25 card. I'll sit there from 3 a.m. to 1 in the morning.
You're going to get a little bit of a break because after this we have, I believe, 3 weeks. 3 weeks without fights until May 19th or 12th.
Bean enough just to hang out.
There's going to be some money moves, changes to be made during that time.
I just have to really quickly before we get back into the card. So you know how you've heard blusterings of Floyd Mayweather's getting shot at? I think it's a conspiracy. I think none of that shit happened. That was just him wanting attention that, like, because Conor got all that attention from the bus thing.
Uh-huh.
Floyd was trying to get it back and no one cared.
Interesting.
I don't think any of that shit happened.
Wow.
That's we need UF conspiracy. That should be our...
But is Mayweather a part of that?
Now, because Conor had to go touch him.
Oh, yeah, he got blessed.
Yeah,
he got blessed by Conor.
Well, we'll talk about Ronda in WWE because she'll always be a fighter. We'll talk about Brock. We'll talk about CM Punk probably. Whatever goes on. I think once you're in it, you're in the MMA familia.
Oh, dang. So, anything left with LaFleur Garcia?
No,
I think we wrapped it up with those guys. Then we had Daniel Hooker coming in as a heavy favorite. Didn't see the value in it. I guess I should have seen the value in it. Was, I feel like 100% called by the bean here. Joe Lozon, Diego Sanchez, Jim Miller,
Caliber.
all in the same boat. And you saw it here tonight. This was controversial did Jim Miller need to get knocked out twice in a fight? That knee landed beautifully, set up by Hooker, who at 155 pounds, also moving up, looks 100% better.
So much better.
Moving so well. He's using his length better than any other tall guy in any division right now. He has a really good jab on the outside, but then he uses his knee on all these shortest guys. He's using that inside knee. Ross Pearson, exact same knee caught him. Exact same right knee, right to there. On the way down, Jim Miller was definitely, he was completely out, stiff, and on the ground before the ref even got in there. Again, Daniel Hooker landed another uppercut. Jim Miller was out. Was this the fight that... No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't, where the ref got involved a little bit.
No.
And it was... So either way, Where do we go with these guys? I'm going to keep putting money on Hooker. He's going to be a solid favorite for a while. What about Jim Miller?
Feel Jim Miller, turn out the lights. The party's over, in my opinion. I know you're going to fight again. Hooker, I'm going to say, like I've said about a few other times, well, he knocked out Jim Miller.
I agree with that.
At this point, but I also think, man, I'm loving everything I'm seeing coming out of New Zealand right now. All the fighters coming out of there right now, I am loving. They might be my new Poland. Like I might be jumping ship over.
They're making a scene. They're not here to take. They're not here to take place. They're gonna take over.
Yeah. But I think they have a nicer accent.
I do think they better. Oh,
a little English.
That wasn't spot on.
I thought Conor McGregor was in the room.
Me
It
too.
startled me. I was like, oh shit.
Grace this with
Yeah,
his
I
presence.
thought Conor McGregor was here to take over the LaTB studios.
On to Aljamain Sterling defeating Brett Johns in a 3-round decision. We were both on Johns here. We thought Sterling's chin was going to be suspect. 4 months ago, he got iced as iced could be, dabbing it up for everybody's pleasure. But to nobody's pleasure, or a lot of people coming on Sterling later, no LaTB pleasure, Brett Johns got outschooled. This is where Aljamain Sterling showed that he is a top 15 fighter, and Brett Johns still has growing to do. It really sucks. I played Johns in a few DK plays. He's a guy who really got me like 19 points. So
he
that
just
was
could never get his skates underneath him, Johns, in the fight. He never could get his flow going. He never could get his combinations together. Aljamain Sterling impressed me. He looked better than I've ever seen him look.
100% better.
I can't even believe
all the way around.
To me, he gets most improved award of the night.
Yeah, I would agree. Completely different.
Mind fucks me going forward with him because you don't know if he's going to be an underdog. You don't know what to think of him. He looked good everywhere. There was no weaknesses.
He's had performances that I've just lost so much money on him that he's, again, been that big favorite for a lot of reasons and doesn't show out. But he showed out. Maybe that knockout, maybe that type of finish made him realize, I need to start doing other stuff in here because, again, new and improved Aljamain Sterling.
I loved it.
Is a funk master that is going to be someone to watch.
It was an exciting fight.
It was an exciting fight. It was fun. But it was 30-27 easy.
New Jersey Auditorium, boo on you.
Non-stop
on you.
Regardless of winner, Hooker got a ton of boos.
Boo on you. I understand when you boo against your hometown person losing. I understand that. But once the guy's talking and he's like, thank you guys for having me, I fucking cheer him. Don't be an asshole.
Yeah, he had every option of getting knocked out in there as well. You got to respect the game. But New Jersey's known to be a rough city.
Yeah.
It's known to be a rough state.
Yeah. Well, so they think. It seems juiced. Yeah, I just think of the Jersey Shore. That's all I think in my head, that TV show on MTV.
A whole lot of TRT. They don't have anybody to call to.
TRT and fist pumps.
New Jersey doesn't care if you are on TRT.
Yeah.
They're probably giving it out. It's probably in their Coke.
They're like, don't even worry about it, Frankie Edward.
Coca-Cola. Yeah. On to a underdog that here at LaTB, if you're following along, we could have moved the Leslie Smith pick, but I feel like that deserved to go on to.
We were heartbroken.
It was too much of a whirlwind. But David Branch.
It couldn't have been the Leslie Smith underdog because I didn't have him.
Oh, never mind. I ended up swaying you. I thought Thiago Santos was looking good, but in a lot of other fights, we're seeing these heavy punched guys, these heavy-handed guys. The way you beat them is you got to get in their face, and David Branch did that from the beginning of the bell. He never let Thiago Santos throw a few hard kicks or punches in there because he knew that Santos was hella powerful. Ended up mixing in a couple takedowns. Branch did, but really finished it with that overhand right. And Santos also ate an extra few shots on the ground because he was night after those hammer fists, and I think it could have been over that after that right. This is where the ref stepped in and ended up re-knocking out Santos.
His knee went right on his head. He looked like a little mini Chase Sherman.
Yeah, he ran in and totally just stumbled all up into him, cartwheeled on both of the fighters. Branch looked better than he ever has in there. I think
the fight was too short, in my opinion.
And
it was a flash knockout, in my opinion.
Was it a flash? Or I feel like I was saying this on the podcast. look at the four guys
David
that my
Branch
head
doesn't
that
knock
beat.
anyone out.
Agreed, right?
And so the fact that he knocked him out, and if you see the placement of the punch, I'm nervous as hell. I don't want David Branch to start thinking he's a power puncher at all. And so I'm nervous on him going forward, and I don't know. It depends on how much time off that the mallet takes. Whether or not I like him going forward, but I just think it was a weird technique. I didn't see it set up as nicely as you did. I thought it was too quick to tell. It looked a little messy, and he looked stunned when it happened. Like, he like backed up and then ran in.
But that's where I think it was a game plan, because as we were saying, even in the main event, you can't let those guys get range.
David Branch went in thinking, I'm going to try to knock him out. When you're a guy that never knocks out anyone.
I don't think it was. I'm going to come knock him out. I think it was more, I'm going to get in his face so he can't hit me. And in that, the knockout came because it was just too much coming at you. Pressure. Exactly. And because when he couldn't set up his power shots, he wasn't throwing them. A couple body kicks came in and Branch was like, okay, I'm going to shoot it on you because fuck that shit. And it's just a good fight IQ. It was the right game plan for the right fighter. We saw the same game plan be implemented later on in the evening, and it works for these style of fighters. It's the evolution of the game.
I may be salty, but I just don't think it was a game plan.
So sketched out for you on Branch. I think he's still somebody big. Santos is going to beat a lot of other guys in there. Santos is going to beat a lot of other guys.
The 185 division sketchy.
It is an interesting. It is an interesting division.
Michael Bisping's 8. Sketchy division.
Good point. On to Justin Willis versus Chase Sherman.
Coming at you, Count.
Woo! Justin Willis defeating Chase Sherman in a 3-round decision. I don't see how Willis wasn't able to get Sherman out of there. Sherman was never won a round, was a punching bag the whole time, tends to do that in most of his fights, and has just a bobblehead of a head because he ate some punches that would have put out a lot of other guys, but that toughness isn't good for you at all. We're going to see it again from Chase Sherman. Anyone who has a better gas tank is going to put him out.
I think Willis didn't look great. He did all that and couldn't get him out.
I totally agree. We were saying again, he's a 185er.
Yes,
Willis is
that
shape.
That body. He has the worst body in the UFC. He wins the award for worst body in the UFC. Worse than Mark Hunt.
Not Albini?
No. Baby Albini has thick-ass legs, too.
But they're fat. They got bigger. He went from he gained 20 pounds.
Big calves. I feel like Wilson has little skinny legs and a big old... He's like a jelly. He looks jelly. He doesn't look hard. He doesn't look like Roy Nelson, like a stiff gut, like you'd punch it and be like... It looks like you'd punch it in your hand and be like, ooh, and he'd be like, ooh, feels good.
But Willis, I don't know. Yeah, like as we were saying, there's other guys that are going to give him way more trouble
just looks
than
like
Sherman.
The extra skin that he has hanging off his body that he's
already cut. He's probably already cut a good amount of weight just to get. But
there's no point because I don't know if he could get all the way to maybe 205. Let's see what 205 looks like for him first. But I'm interested in that. I think he's going to have a rough time in this division going forward.
I agree with that. I don't think Willis is going to be that big of a favorite moving on. It was hairy at times. It was just really weird how Chase Sherman was never in that fight.
No, he just was there as a punching bag.
Yeah, as a punching bag the whole time. I'm going to be fading Sherman.
I actually
keep fading
think
him.
he was like, he made a little call, got on his cell phone, and he's like, hey, Cub, what's your game plan? And then they had the same game plan. Oh, just stand there and do nothing? Great idea.
The co-main event was Frankie Edgar versus Cub Swanson. It was more of the same. It was another 15 minutes of beating for Cub Swanson. That fight, it was exactly where the 5th round ended up and kept going.
On the feet a few times.
It could have been. Cub Swanson never was back in it. Frankie Edgar's chin, it was the biggest thing I was fading in that fight.
I agree.
I thought that he was just going to get rocked and hold on for dear life and then lose his weird decision, split decision type thing. But nope, Frankie Edgar showed that he maybe wasn't out. He maybe wasn't whatever. Cub Swanson.
Never been known for power.
Never, ever been known for power. Hasn't had a good enough of a game plan or change. She's going to stay Cub Swanson. Frankie Edgar's going to stay Frankie Edgar. So we got to keep playing those guys the exact same. Gatekeepers at 2 different levels. Cub Swanson's a top 15 gatekeeper. Frankie Edgar's a top 5 gatekeeper.
Yeah.
And that's
and
where it's going to
I don't want
stay.
Frankie. He's already talking about Ortega or Max. I don't want that for him. I don't think that goes well. We already know how the Ortega turned out, and I don't think Max. Max is like a next level tier guy for everyone around 30 pounds. He is next level, and not that Frankie wasn't next level for a ton of time. Max is something special.
Yep.
I think he brutally hurts Frankie. I don't like that. Oh wait, it's the next fight coming up.
In the main event.
Yeah. So, anyways, who do we got?
I think they're both gatekeepers. I think that's it. I mean,
yep. I agree.
It's just that there's not too much.
That is that, and I do think that Chin is still susceptible because Cub is not
two other guys.
Cub he only hit him 2 good times in the whole fight, and everybody was nervous. It was probably the 3rd round. I think that Cub got a good piece of Edgar's chin, and everyone held their breath.
Yep.
And it looked like Frankie did too for a minute. Like, oh shit. Oh. So.
But he did pass whatever tests he needed to. I do hope he takes a bigger break than a month from it to his next fight, because then I am going to be having to fade Frankie Edgar again if he fights in a month, unfortunately.
Agree.
Main event, we had
Make
Kevin
sure you're
Lee.
liking and subscribing, and we love you and appreciate you.
Kevin Lee, Edson Barboza. This only ended up going into the 5th round. It was a doctor stoppage. If Khabib dominated Edson Barboza, Kevin Lee destroyed Edson Barboza. Edson Barboza, though, was more in the fight than he was in the Khabib fight due to one specific spinning heel kick that had Kevin Lee all sorts of dancing, and that was because Kevin Lee, again, like we were saying before with that forward pressure, if you let Edson Barboza or Thiago Santos get at range, they will hurt you with their limbs at that extent because they know how to. But if you're wrestling them, they just cannot turn it over. And Kevin Lee used more takedowns, more control. Those elbows were so nasty the whole entire fight.
Better ground and pound, better technique. He looks better than Khabib everywhere.
Right?
Except for, I'm a dancing noodle in the middle of the... I'm a dancing noodle in the middle of a... I'm a dancing noodle in the middle of a... I'm going to edit that over. I'm picturing it.
But was Lee he was the favorite the whole time. Dog needs to end up shutting up about that because it don't make no sense. Lee was the favorite because a lot of people saw the wrestling take part. We thought it was going to be the deciding factor. We know how to beat Edson Barboza. He's a gatekeeper for those top 5 guys. He'll beat a lot of those guys, but advanced takedowns, chain wrestling, and top pressure over the hips.
I think it's Barboza Iaquinta's the next fight to make.
That's a fun one.
2 stand-up guys, let them do their stand-up.
Yep.
So you think, and then Al takes down Barboza and beats him in the same way. I don't know. I think Barboza, it's almost a damn shame that we saw 2 back-to-back wrestlers against him, because I think everybody has a game plan this point forward with him.
Agreed. But I do think there's money to be made on Barboza because other guys are going to be like, oh, that's the game plan. But the takedowns are hard to get on Barboza.
Nasty-ass leg kicks.
Those knees were close to landing a few times for Barboza.
I thought Kevin Lee looked good everywhere, except, even when he was dancing in the middle of the...
But with that cut was opened as well by those elbows. Those are factors. Those are Tony Ferguson-esque, where Alpaca was saying, oh, look at how the elbow hurt Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee, where he's evolving his game, is he's taking things that he's learned in the fight. You
said something which I thought it was a really good thing to point out now. The difference between him and Khabib is he used a lot of Khabib's wrist control, but especially from the top. Anytime Edson grabbed his wrist, he's like, fine, here's an elbow. Yeah. Fine, here's an elbow. Every time. Yep. And then Edson let go of his wrist, and then he had control of both his arms to take full mount again. It was really interesting to watch.
The interesting thing was how Khabib was using kind of his own Russian wrestling style. Kevin Lee was showing his MMA American wrestling style. He was using the wrist, but he was using Edson Barboza's own arm to cross his other arm, and then just elbowing him in the face for 4 rounds, essentially. It was...
I know the fight I want Kevin Lee to have next.
What is it? Because it's got to be the top. He's saying, of course, Khabib.
Here's mine.
The champ. Current champ.
I want to see Kevin Lee versus the Underground King.
That's actually a really good
fight. Eddie Alvarez, Kevin Lee.
But
They're both very well-rounded fighting.
does
fighters.
Kevin Lee stay at 155? He just missed weight for the first time ever.
Yeah, you don't move up for one miss. Khabib's still at 155.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Is it one of those things that we were talking about before with missing weight? Same as Aspen Ladd and why Leslie Smith didn't take the fight. She said Aspen Ladd is taking an advantage. How many? What were the stats? What was the stats that you were giving me about people missing weight this year?
It was like 9 out of the last 10 people that missed weight have won their fight.
Kevin Lee added to 10 out of 11
yeah.
have just
10,
all won.
10 out of the last, I think it's 10 out of the last 10 now. If you just, because it's the last 10 people that have missed weight.
Have all won their fights. There is a level of an advantage. We've talked about it here multiple times. To hurt yourself for that extra pound isn't worth it, and it changes your entire game plan. That gas tank can be very hurt. Does Kevin Lee? He looked muscular as well. He looked strong in there.
I liked Kevin Lee all the way around.
Either
Eddie Alvarez or Dustin Poirier. Those are the next fights for Kevin Lee.
Oh, yeah, those are good calls. Who would you give to Edson Barboza?
He's the forever gatekeeper. It's like really the same as Frankie Edgar, where it's like whoever's coming up next. Whoever's coming up next in the 155, he's just going to sit there and wait for him. And once you get past Edson, then you get into this realm of It's what a Slayer's Row.
Right.
Slayer's Row.
How did you feel back to wrapping the whole card up? Other things that came out of it real quick. I was just quickly thinking about how did you feel about Daniel Hooker calling out Felder in his post-fight speech? I know I'm going back in and whatever, but it just ran in my mind and I was like, it was fun. I think it encompasses kind of where these call-outs are even going when you have guys in the division as well.
And it's a super smart call-out because you know you're talking to somebody who's healthy. And you just had a short fight where you're still healthy.
I just thought of the Edson Barboza fight.
Yeah.
Daniel Hooker.
I think it's too big up for Hooker. He's not ready yet.
But
Paul Felder versus Hooker, or Paul Felder versus Barboza.
Edson Barboza?
Better fight.
That's actually a really interesting fight too.
Better fight all day.
Do you think the Hooker-Felder fight gets done though? Because Felder said, I'll take that fight.
It's an easy fight for Paul Felder right now. He sees it as that.
I might have Hooker in that one.
I have Paul Felder right now. If they were going to go in that fight right now, I have Paul
How did you
Felder.
feel about the announcers throughout the night? Encompassing the whole night? Because we usually like to talk about that.
Paul Felder stepped up. I enjoyed him. And a few times I was thinking, who am I listening to? Oh, it's Paul Felder. I'm enjoying
I think
what
he's been
saying.
getting much better.
I used to hate him ringside, or his announcing, but now I like it. I thought he did a better job with the fighters in the octagon. Knew the questions to ask, I didn't feel he was awkward at all. I enjoyed it. Overall, good night of fights.
Agreed.
Oh yeah, and FYI, we got a lot of email saying that everyone liked that we put out that little 1.5-minute short clip of just our picks right before the fights.
On YouTube
and
the day
we put
of.
up the fights that were canceled and things that we were highlighting, and people were into it. So maybe we'll do a couple more of those going forward because they're easier to kind of edit and get out after weigh-ins, after you and I have our final talks of who we're going in with. So we'll try to get that out maybe on Fridays. So look forward to that if you're not already subscribing on YouTube. And make sure you're hitting that bell everywhere else. Thanks, and we love ya.
Let's go to the meet!
So, who has the Leslie Smith underdog pick? Who was the Mexican dude and the lesbian chick? Everybody say you mean Lesbo and the Bean. Who's that out there living they dream? Lesbo and the Bean. Who's that still smoking all the green? Lesbo and the Bean. Come on y'all, let me hear you scream. Lesbo and the Bean.